He forced me to sign away my mansion. I smiled when the lawyer unfolded the real papers. Vanessa Miller sat quietly by the kitchen window, the morning sun casting a soft glow across the cluttered table where last night's coffee cups and scattered newspapers lay forgotten. The salty breeze drifted in from the nearby ocean, tugging gently at the lace curtains. But Vanessa's gaze remained fixed on the worn leather-bound journal in her hands, her grandmother's journal, filled with faded ink and memories only Vanessa truly understood. This was the house her grandmother had left her, an elegant, towering mansion perched above the rocky cliffs, its white columns gleaming against the clear blue sky. It was more than property. It was legacy. Yet no one seemed to see it that way. The gathering in the dining room buzzed with the clamor of family cousins, aunts, and uncles, but Vanessa felt like a shadow among them. They whispered doubts like an invisible weight, pressing down on her. "You can't expect to handle that estate, Vanessa," her uncle had murmured last week. "It's more than you're ready for." Vanessa swallowed the sting, rolling the words around in her mind, but tried not to let it show. She knew they meant well, or at least thought they did, but their disbelief hung heavy in the air. Today was supposed to be different, a family brunch to celebrate the first month since her grandmother's passing, a time for remembrances and, hopefully, some recognition of Vanessa's role. But as Eric, her cousin with a sharp smirk and sharper tongue, leaned forward, his voice cut through the warm chatter with cold precision. "Oh, come on, Vanessa," Eric said, loud enough for the room to hush. "We all know you're sweet and all, but running a mansion, managing investments, repairs, guests, that's not exactly your forte." His eyes glinted with challenge as he continued. "Maybe this whole inheritance thing was just a lucky twist. Honestly, it's probably best you don't overreach." A few family members exchanged uneasy glances. Others tried to stifle amused chuckles. Vanessa's throat tightened, her pulse thumping loud in her ears. Her hands clenched the edge of her chair as she forced herself to meet Eric's gaze, steady but hurt beneath the calm exterior. "I appreciate your concern, Eric," she said quietly, voice firm despite the flutter in her chest. "But my grandmother trusted me to take care of the house for a reason. I won't let her down." Eric just laughed then, a sharp, dismissive sound. "That's cute," he said, standing up and knocking back his glass. "Well, good luck proving that to everyone else. You're going to need it." As Eric's footsteps echoed away, Vanessa felt the weight of every skeptical eye burning into her. The elegant ceilings and polished floors of the mansion beyond the window felt suddenly further away, as if the house belonged more to their doubts than to her. Yet beneath the embarrassment, beneath the quiet humiliation of being underestimated by family, something fierce sparked in her. It was a challenge she wasn't ready to surrender. Her grandmother had seen something in her worth believing in. And Vanessa wasn't about to let other people's doubts erase that faith. Not now, not ever. The afternoon sun filtered through the tall bay windows of the old family mansion, casting long shadows across the polished hardwood floors. Vanessa stood near the grand dining table, where a crisp stack of documents had been placed, their sterile whiteness stark against the rich mahogany. Her fingers trembled slightly as she scanned the room. Faces she once called family now seemed like strangers, twisted with patronizing smiles and calculating eyes. Eric, her cousin, lounged confidently in a chair opposite her, a sly grin tugging at the corner of his lips. Beside him stood a man in a tailored suit, a lawyer so smooth and practiced that his silver tongue made the air itself feel slippery. "Vanessa, all you need to do is sign these papers," Eric said casually, waving a dismissive hand as if she were a child refusing to eat her vegetables. "It's just routine stuff. Tax adjustments. Nothing to worry about." Vanessa's heart pounded, the recent haze of grief still thick in her chest, but now it mingled with something sharper. Unease, suspicion. She peered down at the pages stacked before her, legal jargon twisting and turning like a web she couldn't untangle on the spot. Hesitation crept into her voice as she tried. "Can you explain exactly what these are? I don't want to." Before she could finish, The lawyer stepped forward, speaking rapidly and authoritatively. Miss Miller, these documents facilitate the transfer of certain financial responsibilities related to the estate. By signing, you'll simply be streamlining the process to ease tax burdens. It's standard procedure. His tone was smooth, but there was a cold edge beneath it that set Vanessa's nerves on fire. Eric chuckled softly, leaning in to whisper with a patronizing lilt. See, Vanessa? Nothing complicated. Just let's get this over with. So the family isn't stuck with taxes they shouldn't have to pay. The air in the room felt suddenly heavier, nearly suffocating. Vanessa glanced around at the assembled relatives. Some wore smirks. Others watched with detached pity, their eyes silently agreeing with Eric's ploy. She could feel the heat rising in her cheeks, a burning blush that matched the knot tightening in her stomach. Her voice cracked slightly as she began to protest again, but was cut off by another volley of legalese from the attorney. Miss Miller, the lawyer said with a rehearsed patience that grated on Vanessa's skin. These are routine forms. Refusal to sign could result in administrative penalties or delays in title recording. It would serve no one's interest. Vanessa's breath caught. The room seemed to close in around her, the bright sunlight outside no longer welcoming, but glaring, spotlighting her discomfort. Her fingers inched toward the pen, icy now as doubt settled deep. Her mind raced, recalling all the whispered warnings from family, the subtle shakes of heads when she spoke of managing the estate. But something within her coiled tight, not gratitude or trust, but defiance. She knew what giving in now could mean, yet she felt trapped, like a small boat caught in an undertow. Her voice barely a whisper, she said, I need time to understand this. I'm not ready to sign. Eric's smile twisted into something colder. Vanessa, you don't want to be the one asking for trouble, do you? This is just helping you, for your own good. The lawyer smirked quickly, eyes glinting like a shark sensing blood. The gathering shifted uncomfortably, the few family members who had been sympathetic retreating, silent and unwilling to intervene. Vanessa's heart hammered, her palms slick with sweat. The weight of their skepticism pressed down, but still, beneath it all, a quiet spark of rebellion stirred. Could she stand firm in the face of this orchestrated pressure? The question hung in the room, unanswered, as the lawyer uncapped the pen and slid it across the polished wood toward her. In that moment, Vanessa's mind raced with the realization. This wasn't just about papers. It was about control, and she wouldn't be easy prey. Was there a way to turn this tide? Could she find strength in a room full of doubt? The clock ticked on, the sun outside climbing higher as Vanessa's gaze met Eric's. Steady now, unyielding beneath the waves of humiliation and subtle threats. What would she do next? Vanessa sat at the edge of her worn couch, the soft hum of the city filtering in through the cracked window. But the mansion, the one she thought was hers, loomed heavy in her mind. The stack of papers she'd signed under pressure still felt like a shadow looming over her future. She fingered the corner of one crumpled document, the words blurred by urgency and fear. But nothing made sense. What exactly had she agreed to? And how could Eric have convinced everyone to turn against her so easily? Her phone screen glowed dim in the twilight as she scrolled through unanswered calls and messages she'd sent to Eric's lawyer. Each ring filled with hope, each voicemail laced with desperation, only to fade into silence every single time. The lawyer's silence was deafening. Was he ignoring her? Or worse, covering for Eric? Vanessa's chest tightened as doubt gnawed at her resolve. She called her closest friends next. Karen, always sharp and protective, answered reluctantly. Vanessa, listen, I hate to say this. Karen's voice was heavy on the other end. This whole thing smells off. But everyone says you're probably out of the house. Courts, contracts, it's all lining up against you. Vanessa swallowed hard, the sting of those words sharper than she'd expected. On the floor beside her, the faded family photo rested face down. Her grandmother's smiling gaze hidden, as if she too was shielding her disappointment. But Vanessa's lips pressed into a thin line, determination flickering in her eyes despite the weariness. She wasn't ready to surrender, not now, not after everything. If she could just get a closer look at the paperwork, maybe have someone she trusted examine it, there was still a chance. Grabbing her laptop, she began the slow, painstaking process of piecing together every document she could find: emails, old letters, legal notices clumsily forwarded from Eric's contacts, anything that could provide a clue or loophole. The neighborhood cafe became her refuge. The clinking of coffee cups and low murmur of conversations offered a distraction from the storm inside her head. She pulled out a magnifying glass, studying each clause, cross-referencing terms she didn't fully understand, making notes in shaky handwriting. Late into the night, the words blurred and twisted, but faint glimmers of hope teased the edges of her exhaustion. One slip in a line, something about conditional signatures or alternative executors, was there. Was it a lifeline, or just another dead end? Questions spiraled, but at least this was something. At least she was uncovering the layers behind Eric's polished lies. Despite the looming odds, Vanessa's heart refused to quiet. The knowledge that she wasn't powerless sparked a fragile but fierce hope. She might be underestimated, written off by family and friends, but there was still a fight, quiet, painful, and relentless, happening within her. With every page she uncovered, every call unanswered, her resolve only deepened. This wasn't just about a house. It was about proving to herself and everyone else that she deserved to be heard, to be taken seriously. The truth was out there, buried beneath the legal smoke and mirrors, and Vanessa was determined to find it. The sun had begun its slow descent behind the jagged outline of the cliffs, casting long shadows over the manicured lawns of the mansion, now eerily foreign to Vanessa. Her breath caught as she approached the wrought iron gate, the sharp click of her heels on the stone pathway sounding out like a heartbeat in the growing quiet. Word had spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. Eric was hosting an open house, flaunting ownership of the grand estate that had been hers just days before. A crowd had gathered, their voices a mixture of fascinated whispers and barely concealed amusement. Laughter bubbled up here and there, sharp and unchecked, weaving through the air like a cruel melody. Vanessa's pulse pounded, not just from anger, but humiliation, a deep ache that settled like a cold weight. She ducked behind a tall azalea bush, desperate to remain unseen. From her hiding spot, she watched Eric in the grand foyer, arms spread wide, grinning like a man who'd won more than just a house. He had seized her dignity. Photographs and heirlooms, once proud symbols of her grandmother's life and legacy, had been packed away carelessly, shoved into corners or tucked out of reach. The scent of lemon polish mixed with dust and neglect, a sterile environment that swallowed the warmth and history Vanessa had always felt pulsing through these halls. Every detail screamed that this wasn't just a theft of property. It was an erasure of a lifetime's love, reshaped to suit Eric's ambitions. She clenched her fists, nails biting into her palms, the sting barely registering beneath the tide of anguish. Faces in the crowd turned to glance at her shadowed figure, murmurs rising like waves. Some carried pity, others cold indifference, and a few, worse, smirked knowingly at the spectacle unraveling before them. Vanessa's throat tightened, a raw, bitter taste rising as the humiliation swelled. "What a joke," a passerby muttered loud enough to catch her ear. Who would have thought the little cousin could lose it all so quickly? Her breath hitched, but she kept her head low, slipping through the crowd's edge like a ghost. The hollow ache of betrayal cut deeper with each step away from the house she wasn't truly ready to say goodbye to. Tears threatened to spill, burning hot and bitter, but instead she swallowed the lump rising in her throat. The weight of loss was suffocating, more than the empty rooms or the laughter echoing through them. It was the realization that the people she once trusted, her own family, neighbors, and even friends, had not just doubted her, but actively sided with Eric's charm and cunning. The sharp sting of injustice gnawed relentlessly as the sun dipped lower, casting the mansion's shadow over Vanessa like an accusation. Yet, beneath the grief and shame, a quiet ember refused to be snuffed out. The night was drawing close, and with it, a long darkness. But Vanessa's spirit, though battered, flickered with the first uncertain breath of resolve. Could she find a way back from this? Could the story really end here, with her slipping unseen into the night and the mansion swallowed by betrayal? The answer was uncertain, but the fight, buried deep beneath the weight of despair, was just beginning. In that fragile silence, one question whispered through her mind, inviting a quiet courage to rise amidst the ruin. If this was the deepest fall, what heights could she reach beyond it? The late afternoon sun slanted through the dusty panes of Vanessa's small apartment, casting long, golden beams across piles of unopened mail and half-read books. Among the cluttered stack on the kitchen table was an envelope she hadn't dared open until now. Forgotten, tucked beneath a pile of condolence cards from friends and acquaintances who had heard word of the family drama but kept their distance. It was thicker and more official-looking, bearing the steady, elegant script of her grandmother's longtime lawyer, Mr. Fenwick. Her fingers trembled slightly as she broke the wax seal, the faint smell of aged paper rising like a whispered promise. A folded letter rested inside, worn with time, but pristine compared to the chaos of recent days. Vanessa's eyes scanned the carefully penned words, each sentence pulling her deeper into her grandmother's final intentions. The letter spoke of trust, of foresight, and a contingency plan put into place after whispers about greedy relatives began to reach the old woman's ears. It was a fallback, one last safeguard constructed meticulously to prevent what was happening now. Beneath the letter lay another set of documents, heavier, signed, and notarized. These papers suggested an alternative course, a backup testament, requiring Vanessa's confirmation to activate only should certain conditions arise. The idea that her grandmother had anticipated betrayal sent a shiver through Vanessa, mingling hope with relief. For a moment, she let herself breathe, feeling the weight of the world shift slightly off her shoulders. But with the promise came a new wave of uncertainty. How to use these papers? Could they truly reverse the damage Eric was doing? Could justice be served where deceit had already taken root? Determined to act, Vanessa dug out her phone and made a call to Mr. Fenwick, her voice steady despite the tremors beneath. "Mr. Fenwick, it's Vanessa Miller. I found your letter and the papers. I need to meet with you as soon as possible. I want to understand everything." The lawyer's warm but businesslike tone answered quickly, scheduling a confidential meeting within days. Vanessa hung up, the fragile flame of hope, now fueled by the knowledge that she was not alone in this fight. As the days passed, Vanessa rehearsed every question, every possibility in her mind, and though uncertainty still hovered in the background, the presence of an ally with expertise steadied her resolve. She knew the path ahead was unlikely to be easy. There would be challenges, betrayals, and moments that tested the limits of her strength. Yet, wrapped in the quiet wisdom left behind by her grandmother, Vanessa felt a beginning where before there had only been an ending. A final thought lingered, softly urging her forward. Could this meeting unlock the door she needed to reclaim not just a house, but her future? With a deep breath, she prepared to step through. The lawyer's office was stark and quiet, the polished oak desk reflecting the harsh fluorescent light overhead. Vanessa could feel the tension in the air, a brittle energy crackling like static as Eric strode confidently in behind his slick attorney. His smile was tight, assured. He expected the final signatures to seal his win. Vanessa adjusted the strap of her handbag, her palms steady despite the storm beneath her calm surface. Mr. Fenwick, the family lawyer, acknowledged everyone with a polite nod before unfolding a thick set of papers. His eyes settled on Vanessa, warm and steady, giving her an unspoken reassurance. "Before we proceed," he began, "I'm obligated to inform you all that the documents Mr. West," he nodded toward Eric's attorney, "presented previously are not the final binding contracts concerning the estate transfer." Eric's confident smirk faltered. His eyes flicked to his attorney, confusion now tinting his expression. Mr. Fenwick carefully laid the real documents across the desk. They bore the clear, deliberate signature of Vanessa's grandmother and included a critical clause requiring Vanessa's explicit approval for any ownership transfer to be valid. The previous documents, the lawyer explained, were prepared but never authenticated. The enforceable wills and trusts were finalized in these. He looked at Vanessa directly. "This is the contingency your grandmother insisted upon, anticipating potential disputes. They cannot be overridden without your consent." The room shifted atmosphere. Eric's lawyer went pale, fumbling to respond, as the weight of the revelation settled like a heavy thud. Eric locked eyes with Vanessa, his smugness crumbling into disbelief. Vanessa's breath caught, not because of intimidation, but because of rising strength. She swallowed the last threads of doubt and reached out, pen poised. Her fingers were steady as she signed her name, her signature a clear, resolute declaration reclaiming her rightful place. "Miss Miller," Mr. Fenwick said with a genuine smile, "you are the legal owner of the estate once again." Eric's mouth opened, then closed, the words lost in stunned silence. His lawyer whispered hurriedly at his side, eyes darting between the papers and Vanessa's calm face. The crowd watching the exchange outside the office shifted subtly. News spread fast, and the tide of public opinion began to turn. Vanessa felt a swell of quiet pride emanate from deep within. This was no longer just about a mansion, but about standing firm with dignity in the face of manipulation. As she gathered her belongings, Eric's defeated glare lingered behind her like a shadow, but it no longer held power. Stepping out into the warm afternoon light, Vanessa breathed deeply. The true fight had begun, and armed with truth and resilience, she was ready. Would you stand tall, even when the world doubts you? Sometimes the fiercest power lies in quiet strength and unwavering belief in justice. The grand hall was packed with family members, legal representatives, and a few curious onlookers, whose whispers filled the air like restless ghosts. Vanessa stood at the center, poised and steady, despite the swell of tension knotting her stomach. The marble floors beneath her feet echoed faintly with every small shift, every subtle inhale, and every murmur, and her eyes never wavered from Eric, whose usual smirk had faded into a shadow of disbelief. Eric's confidence had been a fortress, until now. As the truth unfolded before the assembled crowd, the weight of his deception became impossible to ignore. The carefully spun threads of his scheme unraveled like fragile silk, undone by the rock-solid proof Vanessa held in her hands. The evidence was irrefutable. The genuine legal documents signed by their grandmother, binding and legitimate, revealed Eric's earlier contracts to be nothing but smoke and mirrors. "Eric," Vanessa's voice was calm but carried through the room with quiet authority. "Your attempts to manipulate and deceive have been exposed. These documents confirm that any transfer to you was unauthorized and legally void." His lawyer, visibly sweating, tried to interject, but the judge, as well as the family's lawyer, Mr. Fenwick, cut him off with a firm gesture. The courtroom and family room melded into one as the atmosphere shifted palpably. There would be no more games. One by one, family members exchanged stunned glances, their earlier doubts about Vanessa starting to dissolve into grudging respect. Old grievances melted into whispered apologies. Faces that once bore judgment softened, and eyes that had doubted her brilliance now acknowledged the steady strength she always possessed. Vanessa's shoulders straightened, and a warm light kindled behind her eyes. She was no longer the overlooked cousin, the underestimated inheritor. She was the rightful heir who had owned her truth even when the world did not see it. The battle had tested her, pushed her to the brink of despair, but it had also forged her resolve into something unbreakable. Eric's face darkened, the weight of consequences pressing down like an unavoidable storm. The legal ramifications for attempted fraud were clear, and despite the lingering bitterness between them, Vanessa remained composed, a striking contrast to his unraveling facade. "This isn't just about property," Vanessa said, turning slightly to face everyone present, voice steady and heartfelt. "It's about standing up for what's right, even when you're underestimated, doubted, or pushed down. It's about having the courage to believe in yourself when no one else does." The room was silent, but for the nodding heads and the quiet murmur of agreement. In that moment, Vanessa glimpsed a new future, one where respect was earned not just through victory, but through grace and resilience. The mansion wasn't just a building anymore. It was a symbol of her perseverance and inner worth. As the proceedings wrapped up and the crowd began to disperse, Vanessa knew this was not just an ending, but a powerful beginning. She had reclaimed not just her inheritance, but her voice and her place in the world. How often do we underestimate the quiet strength within ourselves? Sometimes, all it takes is standing firm, steadfast and sure, to rewrite the story others tried to tell about us. The morning sunlight spilled generously over the polished floors and wide open rooms of the mansion, warming the walls that had once felt cold and unfamiliar to Vanessa. Today was different. The scent of freshly cut flowers mingled with the faint salt air drifting in from the nearby ocean, a gentle reminder of home and history. Vanessa stood near the front entrance, her dress simple but elegant, her eyes sparkling with calm determination and quiet joy. The mansion was hers, truly hers, and it was time to share that with those who had once doubted her. Neighbors began to arrive, hesitant at first, their expressions shifting from curiosity to genuine warmth as they stepped into the inviting space Vanessa had prepared. Family members trickled in too, some carrying awkward apologies tucked beneath their smiles. There was a softness among them now, a new respect born from her resilience, her strength in standing up when others sought to tear her down. Children ran through the sunlit hallways, laughter echoing off the high ceilings, while adults lingered over thoughtful conversations in cozy corners. Vanessa moved through the gathering with grace, greeting each guest with kindness, her heart swelling at the bonds quietly mending, the walls of suspicion slowly crumbling. At the center of it all, Vanessa caught her reflection in a grand mirror, a woman transformed not by wealth or title, but by the journey she had endured, the journey that had tested her courage, her patience, and ultimately revealed her inner worth. She thought of her grandmother's unwavering trust, the whispered lessons of kindness and perseverance that had carried her through the shadows. As the sun dipped lower, casting golden hues over the ocean glimpsed through wide windows, Vanessa found a quiet moment in the garden. The gentle rustle of leaves and distant calls of seabirds wrapped around her like a comforting embrace. Here, away from the crowd, she allowed herself to breathe deeply and reflect on what had been lost and what had been gained. In the face of deception and doubt, she had stood firm, not with anger or bitterness, but with honesty and grace. She understood now that true strength wasn't loud or flashy. It was quiet endurance, the willingness to rise each time life knocked her down. It was kindness that healed, not hardened. Vanessa smiled softly, a peaceful resolve settling through her. Her story wasn't just hers alone. It was a whispered reminder to anyone who felt underestimated or overlooked. Your worth cannot be defined by others' opinions. When you hold fast to your own truth, a world has a way of seeing you clearly. As guests visited the rooms once shadowed by betrayal but now glowing with warmth and welcome, one question floated gently on the evening breeze. How might we all find that quiet strength within to claim the places we deserve? If this story resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button. See you in our next story.